Hello, and welcome to the Legal Marketing Brief, the series where we showcase attorneys from across the country and learn about the strategies they use to market successful practices. I'm John Simpson, CEO of Convert Marketing. Today, we're sitting down with Fanny Nater. Based in the Orlando area, Fanny is an American success story and now runs a diverse practice that includes bankruptcy, estate planning, immigration, auto accidents, and wrongful death. She's also been quite creative when it comes to the different marketing channels she's used to build her firm. We hope you enjoy our discussion with Fanny. You've got a really interesting path to becoming a lawyer that spans countries, languages, I think some time in the corporate world as well. Can you tell us a little about your journey to becoming a lawyer?
Yeah, of course. I arrived here when I was 4 years old. My mom came here on a work visa, and so I went to school here. My education has always been in the United States. We arrived in New York and lived there for 7 years or so. And then I was losing the Spanish. My brother was losing Spanish, and my mom decided that it would be a good idea to send us to Colombia to study for a year. So went back to Colombia for a year, but I used to go every summer and spend the whole summer in Colombia. And so that's what helped me stay connected with my culture and also my native language. And then I went to college to be a paralegal, got involved in the legal field, loving it. And I had a mentor who really encouraged me to go to law school. And I'm so grateful to him for encouraging it because I really love what I do. I love helping people and I love being an advocate for people. I did a small period of time, maybe 3 to 5 years in banking. And banking also was instrumental to get me to where I am as far as a lawyer is concerned. Because when you work in banking, there, at least at that time, and I'm going to date myself, it was Barnett Bank in Florida. And one of the first courses during the first 2 weeks of training that we had to take was customer service. And so it was instrumental the way they taught customer service and how important customer service was. And I've carried that through my entire career in every job that I've ever held in the legal field or in banking. And it has helped to produce wonderful reviews online and to always keep the customer first and make sure that their needs are being met.
So I'm gonna dive into that a little bit deeper. So I want to talk about this mentor. So you became a paralegal, and what was it that the mentor saw in you that had them believe that you needed to go back and advance your studies and get your JD?
So for me, it was a career, right? I had gotten my bachelor's degree in legal studies. And so I thought that was the end of my career. I had started a family, got married, had 2 children by that time. And so I didn't think that law school was in the cards for me. But I took pride in the work that I did. And I was very inquisitive. I wanted to know more. I wanted to know the why. Why do you need me to do this? Or why do you need me to do that? Because if I understood the why, then I had a goal in mind. I understood that every step I took was to meet that goal. And so in doing that, I learned a lot. And one situation occurred where the attorney that I was working under was unable to be present for a mediation. And so I had to go to the boss and tell him that we had to cancel the mediation. It was going to cost money. And he said, why? We're not canceling it. We're going. Is the mediation draft ready or the mediation letter ready? And I said, yeah, it's ready. And he says, well, okay, send it to me. And he saw it prepared and he says, well, what do you know about the case? I explained the entire case to him. And he said, who wrote this mediation summary? And I said, I did. And he didn't believe me because he read it as though an attorney had written it. And so he started to test me on what I wrote, and he confirmed that I wrote it. So he says, okay, you're going to the mediation with me. And he involved me in every bit of the process, but he was really inquiring as to how much did I really know? And I was dead on a lot of things. And that's when he said, I don't understand why you're not an attorney. You're better than most of the attorneys on my payroll, and you're wasting your time not being an attorney. And so that's how that came about. It was an attorney not being able to make it to a mediation that opened that door for me.
Isn't that crazy? And so I think you said you were married, you had 2 kids at the time. So at that point, did you go back to law school?
No, I waited a little bit. Shortly, maybe 2 or 3 years after that. I had 3 kids at that point. Shortly after that, Mr. Hooper was his name. He passed away. He died in an airplane crash. And so I had to kind of revamp my life. My goal was to stay working with him because he was an amazing mentor, such a smart man. And that's when I talked to my husband and I said, I think I want to go to law school. I spoke to the kids. We said, this is what mom wants to do. I would be doing it at night. I'm still going to work. I would pick you guys up like I do, bring you home, make dinner, help with homework, but then dad would be home in the evenings with you guys full time and I would go to school. Are you guys okay with this? And everybody was in agreement. Everybody was very supportive, but it was a lot of work, and it was over a 4-year period that I did law school with a family and working.
That's amazing. And what a lesson for your kids, this idea that your learning isn't done, once you become an adult. And you were able to, build a career off of the further education that you got. So speaking of education that you received along the way, I wanted to touch base on, I believe you said you were at Barnett Bank when you started your career, and you talked about how important that first 2 weeks of training was when they taught you about customer service. And I'm curious if there's one or two pieces of customer service knowledge, ethos, whatever that might be, that you picked up in that corporate training that you now think about when you service your clients.
The one thing that they always told us was let the person say what they have to say, right? Let them speak their mind. You don't have to agree with it. They don't have to be right, but there are tactful ways of saying it. You can tell someone you're not going to do something for them, and they're more willing to accept it if you're telling them, I can't do that for you, but I can give you this other option. When you give someone options, they're more open to accept those options and accept the fact that you can't do something for them versus simply saying, I can't do that. And so I'm very sensitive to that when I go somewhere and I am asking for something or I need something and they say, we can't do that. I'm like, okay, give me options. And I always say that to people. I say, okay, give me options. You can't do that, but what could you do? And it always gets me an answer. It always gets me something that I could work towards.
No, that's such a great way to think about it, because it's almost your job to say, look, I'm going to listen to everything you have to say. And it's my job to come up with options, not just say no. I'm not doing my job if I just say no, right? Well, let me switch gears a little bit and ask you about your practice today. So you've got a pretty broad practice. So can you tell us a little bit about what Nater Law does today, and then where you're spending most of your time?
So we do personal injury is the way the firm took off. That was the whole goal, to do personal injury. But there were little things while I was in law school and just in different aspects of my life. These areas of law were somehow instrumental for me to practice that now. Immigration. I love immigration. I did an internship and a clerkship as an intern for a local attorney in immigration. Loved it, but understand that immigration law is so imperfect, right? So I'm very selective in the kind of immigration cases that I take. I don't take deportation cases because I understand the limitations. And then estate planning. My mother, when she passed, she did not have any estate documents ready. And my siblings and I found ourselves in a situation where we had to make some medical decisions. And because there was 3 of us, the doctors needed all 3 of us to make that decision. And if we didn't make the decision as a whole, then they couldn't do the surgery. And my sister and I were for the surgery. My brother was not. And so that really made me open my eyes to how important it is to have your estate planning documents ready for any situation, because we never know when something's going to happen, right? And then bankruptcy. 2008, 2012, we had a big economic drop in this country where people were losing their homes and foreclosures were on the rise. Bankruptcy was on the rise. And I had an opportunity to help a friend with a bankruptcy and did their bankruptcy for them. And the person who I met with and the desperation that they had because of the bills that they had and everybody calling and constantly knocking on the door, to the person after that bankruptcy was discharged, was 2 different people. The level of stress that was relieved from him and his family was incredible. And so that gave me a passion for bankruptcy. So every area of law, except for personal injury, something has happened in my life or I've helped someone with that area of law that just made me fall in love with it. And I realized how helpful I could be to people. And in personal injury, it's just been what I've done since I started in the legal field as a paralegal. So it was just my comfort zone.
Well, no, that's a fascinating way into, because you do manage a number of different practice groups, but your description of why makes a lot of sense. Well, let me ask you this, and you can choose any practice group you want, but when you're at your best, how would your clients describe the way you deliver for them?
I think overall, I am a problem solver. So, in any single one of the areas of law that I practice, you have a problem and you're looking for a solution. And the solution may not be the same for everybody, but it is right for each individual. So when I sit down with them, I listen to their story, I listen to their situations, a lot of questions. I also ask what their goal is, right? What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Sometimes that question is what answers how I have to proceed, right? How I have to advise them. And that is usually very helpful because when I know what their end goal is, I know everything that they need to do, or at least I give them the legal opinion of what I think they need to do to get there. There's usually more than one way to get there, and I give them every scenario, but I try to tell them this is not going to be the easiest, but it's going to be the better one because at the end of the road, you're going to be where you need to be and probably a little bit better. But these other two might be quicker, but you're not going to be better. So you have to pick. You tell me which one you want to do. I can do any one of those. And so that is what I feel I'm at my best when I can give people solutions based on their needs.
It seems like that goes back to what you were talking about before with the customer service training. I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to ask you the questions. I'm going to give you options, right? So one of the questions I always like to ask our lawyer clients in these types of interviews is what their definition of practice success is. And just to add a little finer point on that for you, like when we think about practice success, I mean, obviously we all want to make a living and so forth, but where do you want your practice to be in 5 years?
I'm at a crossroad, I guess. My children are all older now. I don't have any children at home. I have 2 grandchildren. My youngest child is 26. So we've been empty nesters for a bit. So my husband is 5 years older than me and he's approaching retirement much sooner than I am. Both of us talk about not being ready to retire anytime soon, but we do want to travel. And so the goal is to stay in our respective jobs while being able to travel. And so I hope to keep the practice open at least for the next 5 to 10 years, but then probably after that, we're probably looking to retire. And so I'm also a mediator and I'm hoping to get that going and start mediating and doing a little bit more of that because that will open my ability to travel a little bit more. That's the goal. But my balance is family and meeting my clients' needs, right? I have to be able to do both. I have to be able to be there for my family, my grandbabies, my husband, and meet those goals that we have in life. And then also be able to keep my promise to my client that I'm going to do this for you. You're paying me to do a job. I'm going to do that job to the best of my ability and go above and beyond wherever I could.
Let me go back to one other question. And it's, can you tell us about a client situation, anonymous, of course, that you're particularly proud of?
I'm not afraid of the difficult, right? If I see that there is a possibility to fight for someone and be successful in that fight, I may take that on. And I had an attorney that worked for me who one day came in and said, these are horrible cases. These are just horrible cases. And my response to him is, if they were great cases, they would have settled. And so we had this client who nobody wanted to take her case. But it was a really bad car accident. Just they didn't want to take her case because it was a disputed liability case, a stop sign, 4-way stop sign. One person said that the other person ran the stop sign. But just because of the way the impact occurred, I believed her and the pictures and just a few things. She had gone to 3-4 different firms and they all turned her down. She came here. I asked her for everything I needed to be able to make a decision. I needed pictures. I needed to speak to the vehicle that she was following in front because she had gotten that person's number. So I just spoke to a few people and I looked at some of the evidence and I took her case. We settled her case for a very nice amount. And so she has been eternally grateful for that because she said, I was going to give up. If you said no, I was going to give up. And she was very badly injured. And so that to me was one of the most rewarding experiences I've had with a client, is to know that she felt defeated. I gave her hope, and I never gave her more hope than I'm going to try my hardest. This is a difficult case. It's word versus word. The jury can go either way, but we're going to do our best. And we did. And we did very good. And till this day, she refers everything and anybody that comes across her. I mean, it could just be a fly hit the windshield. Call Fanny. I will be forever her attorney for everything. So that's very rewarding.
I'm sure that's very satisfying to know that like when somebody's got their back up against the wall and literally like is out of options, and you're able to come in and produce an outcome for them that is seems so far out of reach. I'm sure that's enough to keep you going another 10 years, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about marketing. So can you tell us a little bit about the evolution of your marketing strategy as you've had your own practice?
So I started my practice with the blessing of the firm I used to work with. And, I went out on my own. I didn't have a brick and mortar. I worked out of my house, met clients everywhere, every restaurant you can imagine. I've signed a client up just because I didn't want to have overhead. I wasn't making money until I made money. Finally, cases started coming in. I started settling cases, and I decided that I was going to do what the big firms do, and I was going to advertise on TV. Lost a lot of money there because, I was sandwiched in between these big firms that could put, 20 ads in an hour, and my ad only showed one somewhere in that hour, in between segments, so during commercial breaks. And I don't know about you, but that was my time to go get food, go to the bathroom, check on the kids.
Right.
That was the moment when I can get things done, right? So that was a waste of money. I decided, okay, I'm not going to do that. Then I did print. I did a local magazine, and I did that for about a year. At least from that, I did get a couple cases. When I started the firm, I sat down and I spoke to several attorneys that had their own firms, and I asked them, what do you do for marketing? How do you get cases? And I also sat down with a doctor that I knew. And I asked her, I said, hey, how do you get clients? How do you promote yourself, etc. She had a radio show on a religious AM station. And she said, I talk about health. I talk about medicine. Why don't you do a legal show? And she put me in touch with the marketing people there. And I signed up to do a 30-minute show once a week. And they just started, I had a script. And I gave them the questions I wanted them to ask. And so they started asking me questions. And then eventually that morphed into just my show where I went in and I talked about different things. And that yielded a lot of clients. It was a Spanish speaking show. And there was a lot of clients that called. Lots and lots of clients. And so that was what really opened my eyes to the radio. I had not considered that at the very beginning, but that was instrumental. So till then, that radio station closed, and I had to figure out other things. Right around the same time, iHeartRadio opened a Spanish news station, and they came to me and they said, "Look, it's brand new. Would you like to be a part of it?" So I started my own radio show there, but it was 5 days a week. That was a lot. I learned that was a little bit too much, that I overreached. And I did that. I'm still doing that, but now I'm doing 3-minute segments that play 5 times a week at different times during the day. And I record once a month. And so that is where we are now. I did billboards for auto accidents, and that didn't yield any cases, but I do billboards for bankruptcy and immigration, and it yields cases and constant phone calls. And one day I got an email or a call, I don't remember, from Convert It. And I decided to go ahead and give it a shot. And it's rendered very good results. So now that is where I'm at. So fast forward, I have converted. I do the billboards and I have the radio show. So that's my marketing now. And it works.
Yeah, that's a nice marketing mix. So, if you were advising a younger lawyer who's just starting their practice, what are the top 2 things you would say they should do from a marketing perspective right away?
Well, you have to pick an audience. What's going to be your niche audience, right? And then how does that audience receive its information? Those are the 2 things that you have to identify. When you identify those, you put yourself out there using those means of getting the message to them. My niche is the Spanish speakers, right? That is who I target. And so they listen to the radio and they go online and they will do billboards. Like they will look at a billboard and say, I'm going to call that lady. Out of the billboards, then I have a few around town and in different areas of town. I probably get more phone calls from Spanish speakers than any other culture. Much more, probably about 70% are Spanish speakers. And my billboard says we speak Spanish, but that's it. As long as you target your audience, your message is going to get there.